Welcome to CoEfficient Masterclass number 25. And as you know, CoEfficient is all about trying to make better, happier, healthier workplaces for staff, for employees. We know that when we do this, when we create better environments for staff, we actually end up creating a happier staff. Happy staff go home every day, create happy families. Happy families become happy communities. So if you're here, you believe in that too. I'm pretty sure we've got the entire world covered today. We've got from the west coast of the USA all the way around the planet, all the way to New Zealand. So it's amazing to have you all here. Thank you so much. So today, I'm really pleased to welcome Beth Thomas. So Beth is a neuroinclusion specialist, certified ADHD life coach, and a keynote speaker who works with individuals and organizations to help people better understand what they need to work and live well. Today's session is called Regulate and Realign, Build Your Personal Sensory Regulation Toolkit. Beth will be helping us to look at burnout, overwhelm, and practical ways to work with our nervous systems rather than against it. I've always loved spending time with Beth and speaking with her. She's so knowledgeable and so full of energy, and I'm sure you're going to feel the same in about 20 minutes time. Beth, welcome. Over to you.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, give me just a hot minute whilst I load up my screen share. And in the meantime, if I could just ask a brief question for you guys. If anyone hasn't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could mute your microphones, just so that I don't get distracted with any overlapping noise. That would be super helpful. Thank you. Right, now let's find that screen share and get this party started. Excellent. All right. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see my screen, please? Excellent stuff. All right. So we are away for the next 20 minutes or so. Let's have some fun. So I'm going to begin with a quick question. Who here, pop a yes in the chat if it is you, has experienced a moment of overwhelm recently? Like a whoa, oh my goodness, that was a bit much of the muchness. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Wow. A lot of us. Excellent stuff. Well, at least I know I'm in the right place in that case. And when you experience that level of whoa, there's a much of the muchness going on right now. Yeah, a bit much of the muchness. I like that too. When you're in that moment, how many of you, pop a yes in the chat if this is you again, think, I've just got to push through it. I've just got to get on, got to grit my teeth or something similar. Is that the kind of messaging that kind of comes up for you? Sometimes, yes. Yeah. Not anymore. Amazing. I love that. Default position. Yeah, I absolutely heard that. Push through. Totally. Absolutely. All right. So in that case, today, we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at nervous system regulation, because I want to share this with you as a way of understanding that much of the muchness, that bit more, so that we can try to find some more effective strategies rather than just pushing through. Because if just pushing through or something similar to that extent worked well for you guys, I don't think you'd be here. So let's have a little look. All right. So adventure agenda. I always find it a bit more exciting when it's an adventure rather than a lecture, hey? So we're going to have that honest, transparent, practical look at sensory regulation and overwhelm. And in that short time, hopefully you'll walk away with a couple of ideas to start building your sensory regulation toolkit. Tiny little bit about me, because I've already had such a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much for that, John. So recognized neurodiversity specialist, the absolute honor of being an ambassador for a couple of amazing places, including Neuro Places and ADHD UK. And I'm also a CPD accredited trainer in progress, which is very exciting. And I'm super pleased that I have finally submitted all of that paperwork, because that was certainly much of the muchness for me. So I've also got a lived experience that really underpins absolutely everything I do. Congrats. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I cannot tell you how many hours that was. So let's crack on. When I am exploring things like overwhelm, stress, burnout with all of my clients, I notice the same patterns quite often come up, and it's really interesting. So what I would like to do is start with a little bit of that foundation knowledge building. So I'm going to do a little thought nugget, a little bit of psychoeducation around some nervous system basics. Now, advanced apologies to any of the neuroscientists in this room, because I am not one of those. So I'm going to simplify some of these things. I can only apologize in advance if you're sitting there with an eye twitch, because I'm not quite a walking dictionary. So when it comes to our nervous system, it's absolutely amazing. It does so many things for us. One of those really important things is that it is constantly scanning for threats in order to keep us safe. Now, our system is only concerned primarily with that one thing alone. So all of those features or sensory bits of data that we're constantly taking on board, our nervous system is primarily in charge for processing all of that. And the way it keeps us safe is by going through this sort of three-step process, right? So it starts with that sensory input. So we have lots and lots of different senses. We traditionally get taught that there are those sort of 5 key ones, don't we, in school? There's actually quite a few more of those. And each and every one of them is a way in which we can perceive really important information from the world around us. And we need to understand that data in order to be able to have the correct response, right? Okay, so it does that by the process of integration. Okay, so it takes in all of this information, processes it, and it categorizes it and thinks, right, okay, what's dangerous, what's safe, what is okay for me to do, and what doesn't feel safe, and therefore might need a different approach. And then once it's determined that, it's going to send the correct signals so that we have the appropriate motor output, right? So put that into a very quick example for you guys. We might, for instance, put our hand on a hob. Anyone touched a hot plate when it definitely was not cooled down? Yeah, accidentally burnt themselves. And they've gone, ooh, that was very hot. So sensory input, burny burn, hot, don't touch. Integration, understood that process and that we actually need to maybe not touch the hot thing. And so the motor output is take that hand away. Now, that process happens so quickly, we're not even aware of it. And that's a really important thing I'd like you to bear in mind as we go through the next steps. May have used slightly stronger language. Yes, okay, we can absolutely use expletives as well if that absolutely suits you. I'm not sure the audience we've got in the room, so I always like to try to be a bit respectful. But absolutely, whatever language sounds the most appropriate for you is what we use. So we've gone through that process and we understand that that is helping us to stay safe, right? But how is it that I'm talking to you about this process when I'm telling you about overwhelm, or we're sort of exploring overwhelm within the context of things like office work, for instance, you know, the tasks that we have to do, the workplaces that we've got to show up in. They seem a bit different, but they're running on that same system. So let's dig into that a little bit more, hey? So if anyone's familiar with this, I'm going to use Dan Siegel's hand model to help us understand some of that process that I've just explained to you. So feel absolutely welcome to join me. And this is hilarious doing it in Zoom rooms because of the hand gestures that are recognized. So everyone's about to put their hand up, by the way, John, just to let you know. But if anyone wants to join me and you've got capacity, feel welcome to pop your hand up with me like this. This represents your brain. So if we were to have this as our brain, this would be our spinal cord. This right here would be our brainstem. And that area is generally where our survival responses are. Okay, so old part of the brain, that's the thing that gets triggered, and that's in control when it's keeping us safe. So then we're going to come to the thumb over here. We're going to tuck that in to the middle of our palm, and that represents our limbic system. The amygdala is a part of that system, so often referred to in this context as the emotional part of our brain. It's a bit like the fire alarm system, okay? So fire alarm systems are really important because they help us learn when there's danger, right? So all of that data is coming up through, is getting processed by the limbic system, and that determines whether or not we need to hit the fire alarm and put on those emergency processes. We're going to wrap our fingers over the top like that, and that's your brain. Of course, a very simplified version because our brains don't actually look like this, but for all intents and purposes, that is our brain. So this becomes the prefrontal cortex. Now, prefrontal cortex is also described as the thinking part of our brain. So kind of the grown-up part, if you will. Now, I was actually watching a keynote a while back from an anxiety specialist, and they said something really interesting about this area of your brain. So that survival part of our brain, yeah, has an average age of about 4 years old. Wow, 4 years old in charge of survival responses. That's a bit much, isn't it? However, that is the average age of the part of your brain that's in control when it has hit its survival responses. So we now understand what that all looks like. In this model, it talks about flipping the lid. So in the process that I've just described to you with those nervous system responses, if your amygdala, your fire alarm system, decides that there's something dangerous and it's a bit much, it's going to flip that lid and go, whoa, yeah? So remember I said overwhelm? Whoa. So it's going to flip that lid. And what does that mean? Well, it means that that area of your brain, right, that part there that does all of that boring adulty stuff has just left the building. And so that survival response is in control instead. And that's often why when we're in those moments, we're trying to tell ourselves, oh, just, get on with it, or I just need to push harder, or I just need to organize myself, focus more, whatever it is, you're talking to the parts of your brain that have left the building, as Elvis would have said. So why are those parts of our brain important? Well, that part of our brain is the part I fondly like to call the boring adulty bits, because they pretty much are those things, right? So prefrontal cortex hosts something called the executive functions. And those are all of those boring adulty bits that help us do the boring adulty things, like organize our thoughts and feelings and emotions, regulate them, initiate tasks, get started on them, be able to see them through and stay on task until completion. They're also important around things like working memory, so being able to process, manipulate, and retrieve important bits of information when we need them most. And things like flexible thinking as well. So back when I talked to you about the whoa, much of a muchness, what I often hear from clients in that moment as well are very what's the word I'm looking for? Polarizing things in the sense of black and white thinking, it's often referred to. So the sort of, oh my goodness, everything's going badly, or this is all wrong, or this is all going to go terribly badly, right? And we lose that capacity to think a bit more flexibly, to be like, ooh, hang on a minute, is that really what's going on here? So as we can see, these are really important things for us to be connected with if we want to go on to do those boring adulty things. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to another exercise called the window of tolerance. So very, very briefly, the window of tolerance exercise argues that everybody, no matter your neurotype, no matter anything else, has what is called a window of tolerance. Now, when we're in our window of tolerance, Our prefrontal cortex is connected. We are online. We are grounded. We can think clearly. We don't have as much of that brain fog. We're perhaps feeling more confident, more calm, etc. Right? So when we start getting into the other nervous system states, that's when we start seeing things change. Now, what I tend to see is we get from here to here or here very, very quickly. And when we start getting into that state of dysregulation, right? So that lid's starting to come off, but it's not quite yet, right? So it's kind of lifting. We can notice those things. So maybe it's that our heart rate is going up a little bit, or maybe we're getting a bit sweatier, and not just because of the heat wave, or maybe we are feeling a bit more panicky and our thoughts are harder to follow, etc. Now, when we're in that state, we've all just said, we're often thinking, no, I just need to push through, to push harder, or menopause, but I digress. Yes, absolutely. There is a whole world around the hormonal fluctuations and changes that also have an impact on the neurotransmitters that are really, really important in all of these processes as well. So even less fun when you hit those stages. Can only apologize. But I digress. Back to it. When we come to looking at regulation and understanding these things, those smaller signs, that heart rate quickening, or that sweaty palm, or these sort of more panicked responses, or maybe it's even the other way as well. Maybe it's a shutdown. Maybe it's a total mind fog. Maybe it's an absolute nope, shutdown. I can't do any of this. Whatever those features are, either end of that state of regulation, those are really important signals. And so what I'd like you guys to take from today's session is to shift that perception from seeing those as really irritating, annoying things that we just kind of bat away and think, yeah, I'll deal with that later. Quiet now because I've got some more work to do and this is really pressing and it's more important. So I've got to do that first before I can get to meeting my needs. What I'd like for us to do is see those as those really important signs that go, oh, that's interesting. That's important. That's trying to tell me something here. And hopefully, when we practice that, what we can do is start practicing being able to notice when that lid's starting to lift. And instead of going, well, that's it, the sky is falling, the universe, as I know it, is going to crumble, we can hopefully keep that lid from coming off quite so much. And through that practice, we'll get better at recognizing it and we'll find it easier and more manageable to regulate and to realign ourselves as we go on. So take this as a sort of foundational piece. So the thing I always say for absolutely everyone is that different things mean different experiences for different people. So you might look at some of these things and think, absolutely, yes, I totally resonate with some of those things, but maybe not so much others. That's okay. That doesn't mean to say that this isn't an experience that you're resonating with. You don't have to tick absolutely every single box before you feel you can resonate with that. It's really about thinking, which of these mean something to me? How do I connect with these things? And how can I therefore start noticing those as signals to listen to? All right, how am I doing for time? We've got a few more minutes. So this is the part I often find particularly interesting, especially as a coach, because when we get through this process, especially if we've got things like perfectionism as well, I often hear clients say, similar things like, okay, great, that all makes sense. So now what? What are the solutions? How do I fix this? Tell me. And as a coach, that's actually not my job. I know, hear me out for just a moment though. You know what I said about different things working for different people? Well, that means that different solutions are going to work for different people too. So in order for us to build this toolkit, and it's a toolkit because I'll use this analogy because it always does make me chuckle. If we were to, let's say, try to build a house, I'd like to think the majority of us would try not to do that with just a spork. Got some very complicated feelings about sporks as they are, but it's a multidisciplinary tool, right? Does a few things, but it's not necessarily going to help us build a house, right? Because we're going to need a whole, long live the sport. We'll have a conversation about that later. But we're not going to try and use a tool that's not appropriate in that moment. So we want to build a toolkit so that we've got options for the variety of different things that might be coming up for us, because we are each have our own unique profiles. So in order for us to build that toolkit, I'm going to encourage you guys to start here. Start by clarifying what exactly triggers these responses. If we're neurodivergent, for instance, it might be that we've got hypersensitivities to certain things. Think about those. Think about whether or not stress is something that is really impactful. And if yes, what experiences and what types of things lead you to feel more stressed? So start by clarifying all of those points so that we can start experimenting with things that might work. Because let's say, for example, you have a hypersensitivity to noises. I'm not going to be recommending sunglasses because that's a different sensory processing difference or challenge that you might be experiencing. So sunglasses aren't going to do the same job as headphones. That doesn't mean that one is more important than the other, just means that they're different and they have different purposes. So out what each of those are so that we can experiment. Moving on into experimenting, especially for the perfectionists in the room. And I say this with love because I like to consider myself a recovering one. This process is not about wrong and right. It is about what worked, cool. What about that worked? Do more of that. What didn't work? Okay, cool. Equally important data, do less of it. Or how do we tweak it to make it work better? So experiment with that mindset that we are testing all of the time. And if something doesn't work, cool, look at something that does. And this is also where I've noticed quite a lot of clients can fall into that sort of shame spirally trap of thinking, oh, well, you know, this person recommended this and says it really works for them, but it just didn't work for me. Now I feel like I'm just a failure again. I hear that all the time. And so take your time to really experiment with whether or not that thing works for you. And if it doesn't, you can put it in the bin without using it as evidence that you are a failure of a human being, because you're absolutely not. And then the final piece is the reflection point. So check in with yourself. Check in with that mind-body connection. So if we're looking at sensory regulation tools, for example, and you're practicing one, what impact is that having on those features that you could notice? Are you feeling calmer? Are you feeling like your heart rate has slowly come down, less sweaty? Can you think clearer? Reflect on all of those points that you were able to identify in that clarification stage so that you can celebrate the wins, you can note the growth, the differences, the progress, what you're learning, and very importantly, so that you can embed that and keep practicing it so that it becomes easier to remember and easier to manage in the long run. So that was a very, very quick whistle-stop tour of sensory regulation. And I'm absolutely honored that so many of you guys took the time to come and join us today in the middle of summer. If you're in the UK as well, it's a heat wave. And as someone said earlier, aircon is a privilege, not an absolute non-negotiable in this country at the moment. So I am really, really grateful because temperature is actually something that I personally struggle with a lot. Can't regulate for love nor money. And so I find it really difficult to focus and to stay engaged and to not get irritable or grouchy if I am too hot or too cold. So I wanted to take a moment to both give you a lived experience example of how some of these things can show up sometimes, and to lead that into a genuine, heartfelt thank you for joining us today. So that's me, and I hope that sparked a thought nugget or two for you. Thank you so much.
Massive thank you to Beth. I thought she did a fantastic job. It's so interesting. Just so you know, when you all had your hands in the air, I took a photo of you all. That's going to appear on social media. I hope you're smiling as well. And today we have a hard stop at the top of the hour. So bang on 6 p.m. for us in the UK. We will be cutting you off even if you're mid-question. So if anyone's got any questions for Beth at all or any comments, now is the time. There's quite a lot in the group today, so just put your hand up or use your digital hand and I will put you in order. But Bridget, you've got your hand up already. Over to you.
So as we were finishing our group discussion, I posed a question, but we didn't really get a chance to have everyone answer. I loved your presentation. Thank you so much. I love your energy, and the graphics were super helpful. I did not put my hand up, so great. Now I'm going to be the one person in the photo that looks like she doesn't participate. But anyway, I was just so deep in my own, like, oh, I'm really taking this in. Anyway, my question was, or maybe just my thinking about this was, how much work you do with the people that you work with on, it sounds like the intervention part of it, but what about the set point part of it? Like, how do you move your set point so that each one of those moments that used to make you even start to open your hand, you don't even open your hand? Like, what does that work? I know you said everyone has a different solution, but are there some common things that come up that could be helpful to helping mirror that kind of lowering of that temperature for us?
Yeah, sure. So just so that I make sure I'm really understanding the question, when
Yeah.
you say that point, are we talking sort of almost expanding the window of tolerance so that those types of things, are further and further away from what would typically sort of tip us over the edge?
Yes, I love that you put it in that in your language versus mine. Mine's like set point, like threat, starting point. But yes, absolutely what you said.
Yeah,
Yes,
no, sure,
thank you.
absolutely. It's always really important to communicate and confirm that you're absolutely understanding each other. Otherwise, I might start answering something and you're going to think, and
I'm sure it'd be brilliant anyway.
Thank you. But yeah, no, that is a really good question. You've already obviously had the really great point of saying that different things work for different people. So I generally get to know somebody's processing profiles, so sort of how they process information best, how they remember it best, what types of things are then going to be useful prompts and anchors, etc., etc. Because I'm not sort of any, rapid transformational specialist, etc., I can hold a space for us to get curious about this stuff and help build that awareness and understanding, but I can't actually sort of, safely start digging away at someone's subconscious. So it's really about that experimental phase. And I guess it's also to do with, I guess, a level of accountability for the individual, how much they are practicing those things and sort of figuring out what's working, what's not working. So yeah, I would say anything around what works best for them. So for example, I work with quite a lot of very, very strong creative visual verbal processors. And so we will start building little, let's say, anchor points. So if there's a particular word, for instance, that they can notice in those moments, can we then use that as the moment to go, oh, that's interesting, then start that reflective process. And then through that practice, we're able to figure out, what's working. And then I guess sort of timeframes, anything from, weeks to months, I've seen, are very, very dependent on lots of different factors. And sometimes it's also a case of looking at it and thinking, actually there's some barriers here that we're still experiencing. So it might be worth exploring that in some other spaces as well. So a large part of what I do around this, particularly if there's complex presentations, is really about knowing my scope as well. And sometimes the safest and most appropriate and professional thing for me to do is to help take that to another professional as well. So yeah, hope that helps. Not sure if that answers the question, but there you go.
Thank you, Beth. Oh, Anita, you had your hand up and you just lowered it.
Oh, it was a very similar question. I wanted to hear, Beth, if I know that each one of us is different and you can't use what is the tool that you mentioned? You can't use a Swiss knife to build a house or a spork. Yeah.
I feel like
But
a knife would have more purpose.
yeah, but I'm just wondering, like, if there's because our brains are still biological, so maybe there's some commonality between all of us, some quick thing that people, when they use, it really helps reset their nervous system very, very quickly. Like I was sharing about physiological sigh. I don't know if you heard of that. Do you know of anything like that that is just like proven to work for many, many people, like to reset yourself when you're being overwhelmed, panicky, anxious in the moment? Yeah.
For sure. So I think you've already hit on something there that
Mhm.
lays the foundation for that solution. And you said physiological sigh. That's a somatic exercise. So it's about coming back into the body, reconnecting mind and body. So anything that's inherently body-based is likely to be really, really effective. So things like EFT, I've heard quite a few times has been really useful for people. Things like stimulating your vagus nerve, so exercises that do that can be really effective. Cold water on your pulse points can help to, again, sort of realign and regulate and get you out of that different nervous system state of dysregulation. Different breathing exercises, grounding techniques. So yeah, I mean, all of those kind of body-based type somatic exercises and work are often things that are very, very effective for that kind of work.
Thank you.
Thank you. The great Tim Chappell. Let's have your question, please, Tim.
The great and almost late. Right. Hi. Hi, Beth. Thank you. Great as normal. And thank you, John. The thing that I'm discovering more and more is that not only I think that 99% of the UK companies pretend that they know something about their being neurodivergent, positive, and everything, all the rest of it. And they have that label just because it looks good, but they don't actually do it, live by what they say. And that in personal relationships, that or any relationship really, it depends on the other person, how much they're prepared to open their minds to look at themselves, to see how they're reacting to how you are, and to listen to themselves as to what they say, how it affects you. I mean, most of us, I think, realize that it's no good shouting at somebody, do it, do it, do it, do it. It's because it just makes it all so much worse. And I seem to be discovering that when it's realized that for all my life, I walk into rooms and there are people I just don't like, or I just walk out again because it's just the wrong place to be. And it's interesting that we've all got to work so much closer with each other and understand each other, and there is so much personal and financial and family gain to be obtained from listening.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. So collaboration is a really important part of being able to bring this information and insight into a collective space where it's also really effective. So when we're looking at that in the context of, workplaces, homes, relationships, friendships, and romantic ones, it's really important that we have that informed understanding. So there's something I always say, that might be quite a nice point to wrap up with, is that there is such a big difference between being difficult and having a difficult time. The majority of people that I know don't tend to wake up in the morning and think, oh, I can't wait to be an absolute arsehat to the people I love the most. But I'm sure all of us at one point or another have thought, why are they being so difficult? Making my life a pain. And so with what I'm trying to say there is it's really important for us to have that reflective point as well. What are my perceptions and what's coming up for me, and how am I making assumptions based on that and what I'm seeing? Especially important for us to be doing around these kinds of things, because yeah, it's okay for us to have difficult times, and it's really important for us as both individuals and as members of our collectives to also bring that to the support we can provide for those that we love as well.
I think that is a fabulous place to stop. Thank you, Beth. Really massive thanks to Beth. Fabulous, I'm sure we'll all agree. But also a massive thanks to all of you. This community is nothing without all of you brilliant people coming along every month and giving your time and your energy and your support and your love to each other. So thank you very much. We're steadily going to stop at 6. We're stopping at 6. Have a great evening. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.
CoEfficient, helping people help people.